very good evening to all friends, participants, my distinguished colleagues on the desk, Mr. Palyan Sahab, the heart and soul of this foundation, Dr. Anil Garg, and the hydrogen behind him, Ragini Garg ji, the driving force. It's been a wonderful 2 days, very refreshing to listen to people who are practicing the subject on the field. Their colleagues who have critically examined the issues that were presented before us from the point of view of analysts, technologists, and environmentalists. I think one field that we could perhaps increase the interest in it is the finance part of it in future. Because nothing happens without finances. Until the financial sector backs this energy revolution that we are expecting, I honestly feel that we cannot go full steam. The educational stream is getting converted to new fuels. I find that the younger generation of academicians, as well as those who are in the stream now to move on to the next generation of people who would be at the cutting edge of technology, those who are going to man positions which some of us who've gone gray, white, and ultimately almost like hydrogen on the head, very sparse. It's those young people who I think matter most in this revolution. The fuels that we are talking about are basically, we are going back to nature. We're going back to civilization. That is why the last point that I had raised was that let us locate where these things are in nature. How did they come about? We know, having gone through the various stages of industrial revolutions involving a lot of science, technology, etc. But this part of evolution of fuels which maybe our ancestors used become hidden in history or through the, I should say, the dust and tumble of the destruction of civilizations, possibly. We should really explore into that without much ado. The other issue is finances. I think governments have to very seriously today set aside substantial sums of money towards the new areas that are coming up for technology, for science, and for creating a whole new generation of people who are going to be handling that kind of a stratosphere in the process of human development in the times to come. I don't see that happening in a very big way. You see, there is talk of private capital getting into these areas, because they say private enterprise is the most efficient, and it is the most efficient. But by and large, even in these countries, which today you find them to be centers of excellence, it is basically state-sponsored movement to overcome the inertia, to launch it. That kind of push has to come, and the faster it comes, for countries like India, it will be better. We've set the hydrogen mission when it was announced. Some of the media channels asked me to speak on the subject. But I can be frank in this smaller audience. I was not too happy with the kind of target we have set for ourselves. I think for a country of our size and dimension, 5 million tons is not a very substantial kind of a target. Seeing our demand and the need to emerge as, I would say, one of the 3 greatest economies of the world, that is where I position our country as. Seeing our population, we are the most populated country. Seeing our youth, which is again the highest bracket next to China in this race. That is where I think that fire in the belly of the financial system of the country that we need to somehow inject. I'm very happy that the government of the day is a stable government and is not lost entirely in the electoral politics of the times, when we've got to think in terms of vote compartments, necessities of political governance, getting into an office, staying there. See, it's a situation today of not only reaching an office, it's being able to stay there. That is a challenge for a lot of leadership in many areas. The private sector is certainly galloping, making good money. I think the sector needs to take much bolder steps and very big investments into the future, which could be gambles also. But then that is what I think a business opportunity or a time to seize is. When the Teslas of the world came into being, or when Mr. Musk and others got into action, they had fire in the belly, and they were crazy characters. Not everybody succeeds, but who succeeds becomes immortal in history. And that, I think, is the time for a country like ours, which has the manpower, it has some of the skill sets, it has people across the world manning various institutions, including institutions like the World Bank. Why can't we move ahead in that fashion and show to the world that yes, we will develop technology and we will own technology? That is one thought which I have been getting for some time now, because I was not saying that earlier before the elections. Now that a government is in place, a stable government which has had 2 terms, and a third term for any political government is a dream term. 3 terms don't come easily. So it's an appeal to those who can influence decision making that please take bolder measures. And for industry, we've seen very good times for the last 10 or 20 years. You made good money. You made a mark. The stock exchange is showing it. You made your fortunes. We have the new Maharajas. But time to invest in the commanding heights of technology. That, I think, is something we must do. There are parallel areas that are moving, and that is, you see, last month I was going through an event on cyber security and cyber technology. The kind of uncertainties, the black holes and dungeons that exist in that sphere are mind-boggling and very fearsome. But these are clean areas. We need to concentrate much more. I only wish that enterprise takes over where it is needed to step in. The premier universities and technical institutions of the country are working in these areas, but I don't see them emerging as the MITs of the world. I'll be very frank about it. We want international people to be vying to come here. That is what makes an institution great. And I think we must do it. We've talked of this conference, we've talked of water. Water is basic to life. We don't need to say that. Yes, we've got Dr. Balyan in this last session itself. He gave a beautiful chart showing how water stressed we are. And yet we are going through a time in this very city where a lot of us are submerged in the water. It reminds me of a very old slogan, I think, which was about almost 3 or 4 decades back. Water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. That literally is the situation. Now, why has it happened? I think it's sheer negligence on our part. We stormed the water, the river plains, which were sacred areas where water would collect, stay there, and remain there, and would recharge the groundwater systems. There's alarming decline in groundwater tables. And I did mention, I think, in a forum like this last year also, that what I fear is soil subsidence. When the water table crashes down, the earth is going to sink at some stage, I feel. Now that is the kind of future shock which we should be mindful of. In this very city we are staying, I do not know how many groundwater extractions are there in residential and commercial establishments which are not licensed. Because otherwise you're not allowed to sink a well by law. And yet, if those were not there, I do not think the urban services are up to the point to be able to provide this very essential commodity of existence. So when we talk of a water summit, I do not know, when we are talking of urbanization, big plans, these multi-storied towers of 20, 30-storied buildings which are coming up in the NCR region. We only ask them where you've taken do you have the finances? Where do we ask them where is the water that you want to house so many people? The water balance is alarming. Studies like what Balyan Sahib showed on water stress, if these are put out for cities and towns and given a high rating in the livability index of that town or city, the gravity of the problem would face us more starkly. We had also waste to wealth. Again, we're meeting in a city where I keep repeating, the Aravalis are disappearing around Delhi, but the waste mounds are replacing them. And they're coming in all directions of this habitation. And they're not only mounds of waste, the amount of toxicity they would be leaching into the groundwater and to the environment is absolutely appalling. You approach Delhi from any direction, you will find this problem. And yet we say waste is wealth, and we are unable to convert that waste into wealth. When I was a Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Power, I had a colleague who had been taken in on deputation as Joint Secretary. He did not join for a month or two, despite the Minister being personally interested in his joining very soon. He was in the Delhi administration. And the Minister asked me to check out. Why is he not joining? I learned that he had gone to Japan to study waste management. And of course, he was to join us not the next week, he should have joined us last week. But those mounds which north of Delhi, which they went to study how to utilize them, I still cross them every time I travel towards northern Haryana. So we are not handling waste with the kind of urgency that is talked about. Plastic. We were at lunch table also talking about particulate matter in plastic, the toxicity of plastics that we are imbibing, right from tea bags to other packages to whatever else, the nanoparticles that are getting into our system. But this very bottle that you and I are freely using and is all over the place, I do not know the very simple solution to it, which I tried to use when we were replacing the incandescent bulb with more efficient lighting, is give it a price for returning. When you go to buy a new one at that very store, it should be compulsory. If you are peddling that item, you must get it back into the system. And once you have that organizational structure, person comes to buy a new crate of water bottles, let him deposit an old one and take a rebate on it. And this very material can be used in housing, it can be used in 20 other places. You go to any Reliance store, a smart, that Reliance store, Reliance Fresh, he's offering you a bag for a few 9 rupees or something like that, or whatever it is, for every purchase. It's out of his own produce from his refinery. So he's made it a cyclic economy. Why can't you do it for this bottle? So waste is all in the mind. It's not waste, because we've not given a price to it. And the moment we give a price, an appropriate price to water, we'll stop wasting it also. So if anything, I think concrete emerged out of this meeting. One of the very strong points was, which I heard this afternoon, that water must be priced appropriately and priced heavily wherever it is scarce. You can't have the same price of water in Kolkata as in Delhi or Jaipur or some other place. It must vary according to the availability of that commodity in that place, which gets reflected in the cost of living in that place. It's not only buying that commodity, selling that commodity in the market should also fetch you a price. So maybe you will collect that commodity in that form and give it back, or wherever you create a system. Now, these are some of the practical takeaways that have come to my mind, having attended 2 days sessions. The event has brought about that degree of consciousness in the participants. There's a fair amount of satisfaction also that a lot of thinking is going on. But I don't think that it is really in the mode what we call a mission mode. Missions don't come from government announcements alone. Mission comes when society as such moves in that direction and demands that change. That is the mission. We have 3 very holy men who have just joined us on the stage. Now their mission also is to inculcate the right values. And till that movement spreads across the whole length and breadth of society, mission does not come. Mission doesn't come by full-page advertisements in newspapers showing that we have launched this. It has to be a people's movement. And that people's movement is the thing which people like you who are participating today, the young people you teach, who are becoming leaders of tomorrow, in whichever organization or office you are, please try and build that mission there and build an army of people who will go and spread the message of change almost as fast, I would say, though not in that evil way, as a pandemic, but let it be part of society, that change and that self-realization. If each one of us can do it in the organizations that we are sitting in our own homes, that is what we are looking at. I must thank Dr. Garg, Dr. Balyan, Mr. Popley, Mr. V.K. Garg, Vivek ji, and other colleagues, Ragini ji, who have made this event possible in spite of the huge challenges that come across organizers of such events. I'm thankful to all of you for having come to this event, given it the life and the blood which makes it a living event. Thank you very much.